Just begin with this suggestion that these recent events, the violence that we've seen on the streets, the videos that have gone viral, that this represents or suggests that multiculturalism as a project is a failed project. What do you feel about that?
I'll just check the colour on my skin. What do you think I think about that?
Well,
I think there is a danger to any kind of multicultural project if the individuals in that community don't integrate, don't assimilate, don't embrace the values of the nation, British values, which don't go against anything I've ever been taught in my religion, by the way, or at home, or by my nationality of heritage. If you have got those and get a decent education so they understand the history of the nation and all the rest of it, then I think multiculturalism works perfectly fine. Because when I asked my mum, who was an NHS nurse, no problems with multiculturalism. My grandfather, British Army soldier in the Second World War, no problems with multiculturalism, embraced all those values, loved the nation. That's when it works fine. If you don't have that, if you've got a group of people who will say, do you know what, I disagree fundamentally with British values of secularism, liberalism, free speech, and I'm going to take offence at that, and I want things changed so I've got special privilege, then you've got a problem not just with multiculturalism, you've got a problem with any community.
So does it come down to definitions? Because a lot of people disagree about what multiculturalism means. When some people say multiculturalism, they're thinking of multiracialism, multi-religious. In other words, lots of different types of people. But when I usually use multiculturalism, I'm talking about this notion that individual cultures should be preserved at the expense of the host culture, and that you end up with these kind of parallel societies living in their own little bubbles. So do you think we just need to communicate what we mean by multiculturalism a bit better?
I think on the whole, it's one of those things which once you get bogged down into the definitions, it gets really confusing. I think most of us know what it means. It means that I'm not ghettoised.
Yeah.
So if I choose only to live in my little square area with people who look like me, have the same religious beliefs as me, have the same eating habits as me, then we're going to have a problem sooner or later.
Yes.
Not necessarily with me, might be with my children. It might be with, wait a minute, everybody just looks the same, but they don't look like the let me put it this way, native population, which is probably not the best word, but the host, if you want to put it that way. And it's that ability to say, well, actually, no, I've embraced it. I've just come back from the United States. What I'm talking about is embracing it. So you're Italian-American.
Yes.
You'll die for your country even though you're of Italian heritage. That's what I mean about embracing the nation, embracing those values, those British values.
But why is this even an issue? Because the vast...
You raised it.
Well, no. Well, insofar...
I didn't think it was an issue.
No. What I think is an issue is that the vast majority of the people involved in the riots are British. We're not talking about people from other cultures. These are British lads. These are British people, right?
It's a passport, unless inherently there's been that embracing of, like I said, British values. When I dropped my 4.5-year-old son to nursery, you see it in the nursery, it tells you what British... Because, I'd have difficulty saying what exactly are British values beyond the ones that I've mentioned. But it tells you. I think it's a legal obligation in every single school, and I'm glad it is.
Yes.
It tells them, these are British values. We respect other religions. We don't think one is superior to another. We respect freedom of speech, OK? The liberalism, your freedom of thought, freedom of expression, all of those aspects of being in Britain. So that's what we want.
But why is it that, my question really is, why is it that seems to be less of a problem with the older generations who are not involving themselves in this kind of thing, but it's actually the younger British people who seem to have a problem with those
I was speaking to a
values.
local politician before I came on air from Leicester, and she said, yep, they're British, they're poor, they're uneducated. If we have pockets of deprivation... Now, you might say, wait a minute. They've been here. They've been born here.
Yeah.
How come that's still a problem? What's happening with the schools? And why should that be the problem of Britain in the sense of, hang on, their parents, yes, came here, but how come this hasn't been solved? And I think, I tend to think that problems start in the family and the household. I don't think the state's the answer to everything. I do think there are pockets of deprivation and poverty and unemployment. That's one thing, but I don't want to say blame the state for everything. I'm afraid I'd say parents, the home as well. It's a complicated issue. And I'd say they've got a responsibility. So you're right, the parents aren't involved in any of the troubles, but what the heck are they teaching the children? Or what aren't they teaching the children.
So the way in which these riots have been represented in the press, and a lot of people have talked about the way in which these young people, young men mostly, let's be honest, are seemingly identifying more with India and Pakistan rather than Britain, and actually that all of this originated from the cricket match that happened. Do you think that that is a fair reflection of what is going on here?
I was actually really gutted because England just lost to Pakistan. But I was gutted because it was England losing rather than Pakistan winning. There is... Look, it's like with America as well. You know, you can have two, let's put it, two loyalties as such. But
yes,
what's your first loyalty to? My first loyalty won't be to my religion. And if anybody says their first loyalty is to a religion, you want to watch out. That's an extremist. My first loyalty will either be to family, country, king. It'll be one of those things, my values, when push comes to shove. And on a cricket match, I really don't care if somebody supports India or England and they will happen to be born here and all the rest of it. I actually support Yorkshire. I was born in Leeds. So when Yorkshire played India, when Tendulkar was playing, I was shouting for Yorkshire. Right. And that was India's greatest batsman playing for them anyway. But it needs to have that kind of an attitude that actually this isn't that important, that the whole tribal stick... I support Leeds United. You know, I've been to those football matches where you get the same level of tribalism. It's like, look, calm down.
But it feels like an excuse, doesn't it? Like, I refuse to believe this is really about cricket.
I think you're exactly right. You know the two groups which weren't fighting and angry during the India-Pakistan game? The players.
Yeah.
Players are friends.
Yeah.
They get on. They're role models for bilateral relations. And I think you're right. I think it's an excuse when there is a tinderbox of poverty and all these other things. Now, I'm lucky. I come from a community where you've got the pharmacists, you know, they laugh at us. Oh, you're doctors, lawyers, medics, or, you know, you're going to be running the 24-hour convenience shop and all the rest of it. We've been lucky as Indians in this community to benefit from a phenomenal education system, OK, become professionals in all those fields. But we want that shared, because it's in our own interest, you can see it, with the Pakistani population. And we should be reaching out to say to them, look, this is how we've succeeded. All the data proves it in terms of educational attainment for the Indian community. We want to reach out to you guys, as we've done. I've co-founded organisations where we literally do that. We have Indians and Pakistanis together mentoring others because, and they have hugely successful people as role models on theirs. And the point is, let's lift ourselves together, because we understand your problems better than anybody else does, because we're cut from the same cloth. We're cut from the same geography. We eat the same food and pretty much understand the same language and everything else. And I think it's also beholden on us as Indians to reach out to the Pakistani community and say, look, we want you elevated, because we know when we look at the data. Now, I've tried during the Black Lives Matter to try and do the same with the black community, but we don't have that relationship as strongly with them, because just geographics, demography. But again, it's beholden on all of us. And I'd loathe for anybody to say, well, actually, it's the fault of a country to which I'm incredibly grateful to be here. And you might say, well, why are you grateful? You were born here. You've got every right to be entitled to everything else. No, actually, every time I land at Heathrow Airport, I say to myself, thank God my grandfather was in the British Army, because that gave me the right to be here.
Just to address, one of the suggestions that has been made is that a lot of the tensions have occurred because of far-right nationalist Hindus who have recently come to the country, and that this has sparked these tensions. Do you think there's anything in that?
I'm still looking for them. I think there's a bit of a bogeyman thing. So I asked my wife, I said, they're talking about this RSS Hindutva thing. She's Hindu. She said, what's that? Now, that's worrying that if this bogeyman exists... Now, if I said to her ISIS, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, she'd know exactly what I was talking about. If I said to her jihadi, she'd know what I was talking about. So if she can't find them...
Yes.
And there's been some reports that have been going around. I think the Henry... something society, I've forgotten the name. They've been looking, the journalist is doing a PhD.
The Henry Jackson Society.
Henry Jackson, I should know that. Yeah. Free speech and all that. And the journalist there couldn't find them.
Yes.
So somebody can point them out. Now, then they've said, oh, well, no, wait a minute, it's because of what's going on in India, the world's largest democracy, liberal, secular, with the second largest Muslim population in the world, which has had 3 Muslim presidents, you know, Sikh as prime minister, which is 2% of the population. We can't do that in Britain. We won't get somebody from 2% of the population ever be either head of state or head of government. And that's fine. But the point is, well, that's a bit of a red herring to say it's some tiny little group, apparently, which nobody seems to have heard of over here.
Well, it's just trying to find another reason why it could happen, trying to explain the inexplicable.
I think if you've got a load of angry people, you can put them in a football match, and they're going to kick off, and it's got nothing to do with their side losing. It's about other issues they've got, and we've got to find out what those issues are and how do we help resolve them, because at the end of the day, it's our country, and until you can revoke passports and export them en masse, which I don't think is a realistic proposition. There's some people might think so who are watching. Then you've got to work out, well, how do we solve this problem? And actually get them engaged to use those energies. My God, they're energetic. We know that. You know, use that for the economic good of the nation and put them to good work and good use and give them fulfilled lives. I mean, these are people we can still talk to. It's not like they're Al-Qaeda or something. You just no point talking to them. These are regular people. You sit down over a coffee with them, and I bet you know, all the shouting they do, that'd stop, and it'd just be like, oh, actually, you're not that bad.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got a few problems, I've got a few problems, we disagree on a few things, let's see how we can work it out together and work together.
So communication, that's the key.
Bit of empathy probably as well.
Empathy as well. Great. Alpesh Patel, thank you so much for joining me today.